I'm great. How are you?
Okay, your take on the president's statement and the context.
Well, the context was very clear. The president was speaking about race relations and how things have come far. However, a lot of people have to understand that just not saying the N-word in public is not necessarily saying that racism is totally eradicated. And his context was very clear. And what Deneen was saying about rapper in chief, that was totally inappropriate because he wasn't saying it in a rap lyric or he wasn't saying this just to be casual. He was talking about the deep-rooted areas of racism that we have to deal with.
Okay,
and I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, which you see the background behind me. So I know about civil rights. I know about
racism. Where's the racism, Eric?
And things getting better.
The man was elected twice.
Eric, let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question then, because Deneen asked it, and I'll put it in a different context or in a different frame. Sure. Is America institutionally racist? That's racism, which requires codified law, a social acceptance, societal acceptance, and we know that racist will always exist. Bias, prejudice in some form, black, white, and any form will always exist. Is America institutionally racist, or are there racists in America?
There are definitely racists in America. There is racism from the boardroom to the courtroom. So we have to deal with those people. Just like this moron who went and killed 9 people, he was seriously a racist. So we have to deal with those different levels of racism and start addressing it. And some people have said the president has not talked about racism, and when he finally does, he's getting attacked. He did the right thing by putting it in context.
Let me bring this back. Talk about the use of the N-word. I agree on the office being more important. But let's face it, we're not talking about the issue. We're talking about a word.
Well, we're talking about the word and the issue because just like the president said in that podcast, just not saying the word in public does not mean that racism is gone. And so we have to get to the deep-rooted issues and start listening to each other opposed to just battling rams like on the mountain where we don't listen to each other. And we have come a long way. I agree with that 100%. Just like what Deneen said, we have 4 African Americans on national TV right now discussing this. We have come a long way, but we have a long way to go. And that's why it's important to have those discussions, open discussions, and not be so PC about it where we can't have those frank discussions.
I'll tell you what we won't be is we won't be dishonest about it as Americans. And I believe that this country, I think we all agree, Eric, Niger, Deneen, we've come a far way, and there will always be bias, but we deal with those individual instances. Eric, thank you.
He's acting a certain way. I think the untold story of Charleston is all of the family members that lost loved ones, they're out there saying, in an extremely forgiving way, that they forgive this guy, even though he killed their relatives. That's an untold story, in my view.
That's a story that we've been discussing, but forgiving someone for killing your relative, that's a level of Christianity that I cannot fathom.
You and me both.
But DeRay is out doing civil rights work. Just like all the foot soldiers in the Civil Rights March, they were not paid. They were people who may not have been working, who were doing something for civil rights. And that's what DeRay is doing. However, with Twitter, people can see him and see all of his movements more so than in the 1960s.
Okay, but they compared him to Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton has been to the Obama White House 80 to 90 times. Let's look a little bit at Al Sharpton's past.
I'm tired of the American big. You ain't nothing. You a punk. Now come on, do something. Yes. You want to be the only on television, the only in the newspaper, the only can talk.
Do you think that guy belongs in the White House 80 to 90 times? Does that history, with all the talk about the flag, the Confederate flag, all the talk about residual racism, does he belong in the White House with Obama 80 to 90 times, Eric?
Well, Al Sharpton has done some good work in the past, and you're pulling out tapes from the fat Al Sharpton. That was, what, 15 years ago, Sean? The man has done some great work in civil rights movement.
And by the way, and if
a lot of people dislike him, he's done some good work.
And the issue here is, was it appropriate for the president to say this? Let's roll tape.
Racism, we are not cured of.
Clearly.
And it's not just a matter of it not being polite to say in public. That's not the measure of whether racism still exists or not. It's not just a matter of overt discrimination. Societies don't overnight completely erase everything that happened 200 to 300 years prior.
Now, we're making a lot over the Confederate flag in South Carolina. Should the president be using that word, Eric?
In that context, I believe it was appropriate because of what the president was saying is that because you don't say the N-word in public does not mean that racism is gone. And back to what Kevin was saying, the word agitator, it bothers me because Martin Luther King was called an agitator because he was bringing awareness.
You're not comparing DeRay to Martin Luther King, are you?
MLK, all right.
No, I'm talking about the word agitator. DeRay is a civil rights protester just like the foot soldiers.
But you're not comparing
in the
him
1960s.
to Martin Luther King. I want to be clear.
Yes, he is.
I am
yes,
comparing him to the civil rights foot soldiers and using the word agitator. It's one of those words that civil rights protesters, including Martin Luther King, were called. That's what I'm discussing.
Sean, that the left doesn't want to ask about this. If George Bush had said what Barack Obama said and smoothed out that N-word just as smoothly as Barack Obama said, Michael Eric Dyson wouldn't be calling it brilliant, and Eric wouldn't be talking about it in these terms. It is a double standard, and what Barack Obama showcased quite readily is racism is alive in America, and he can say that word that everybody else is pretty much stricken from their lexicon, but he can get away with it because he's transcended all of it. He is the cause of racism. He's walking around with a hypodermic needle infecting people with racism, and then he wants to sit around and act as if he's doing things about it. People in America feel that we are in the 60s again because of people like Barack Obama.
No, Barack Obama was addressing the issue of racism and taking it head on. People have said he never talked about racism or the issues of racism. Now
Eric,
he is.
When he says it's in our DNA, he couldn't be more wrong. I mean, racism is a part of America's history. Wait a minute. It's part of our history. When you say it's in our DNA, that suggests you can't change it. And America's proven that it can overcome wrongs and evils of the past.
America has proven that we can overcome those, but there's a segment that does not want to change, and that's what I believe he was speaking of. There are some people who will not change no matter what.